again, welcome all of you and thanks for joining us. Also for people who join online. So the trigger for this particular session has come from some of the debates that we see in the water sector generally, and also from two sessions that Mansi herself organized as part of the Wednesdays for Water discussion series. So we've been discussing about how water sector education particularly has been could be improved from the current setting. So in fact, one of the point of departure where we started the last discussion was a large-scale study on Indian universities and also education system by Professor Kansal of Tata University. So where they surveyed many of these water education institutions and found, so one of the results from that study is that in spite of lot of call for interdisciplinarity and also engagement with one another in water sector education and training still seems to work mostly in silos. So there are some exceptions which are there in new universities that have come up, but otherwise they are still either engineering focused or social science focused, but there is little dialogue between these two groups. Part of it has to do with the institutional structures in which universities operate. Part also has to do with the way civil society and other actors have been engaging with the traditional universities. So this is why we are calling this session integration in water education, because what we are trying to do is trying to hope to achieve from this discussion and also later on is to have integration across worldviews, integration across disciplines, and also integration across many of these ideas that are present here. So in fact, our panels actually very well represent this diversity of views and also experience. So we have people who are in the academia, people who have worked across academia, policy, and also the civil society sector, and also people who have actually worked very closely with grassroots level, engaged in research, and also very vocal in putting the concerns of water sector on the fore. So we have Girija Bharat, KJ Joy, and Jenny Mukherjee, our panelists. And again, one of the other conditions that Mansi had put is there shouldn't be any elaborate introductions. This will be informal. So I'll just begin with that background. And what I would do is I would go about doing this and also having this discussion with the panels in two segments. So in the first segment, we are trying to identify. So since I already hinted on what are the challenges which are out there, lack of integration or lack of interdisciplinarity. So from the panel's own experience, what are the gaps that they see in the current system of education in the water sector, in terms of educating the new generation in taking up, applied careers or even academic careers in the water sector. So that's the first segment in the dialogue. So I would start with Girija. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much for setting the stage and giving this speech. Our generation is a different generation from all of you. मैं कोशिश करूंगी बीच में हिंदी में बोलने के लिए. We used to work, we used to study for getting a job, but for your generation, you guys are blessed. आप लोगों को job के लिए नहीं करना है, you can make a difference. So that is a huge shift and departure from what we have. So हम लोग academics में ऐसे करते थे, पढ़ाई करते थे जिससे हम लोग को job मिले. यदि PhD किए तो हम ऐसे सब्जेक्ट में करते थे जहाँ जॉब मिले, लेकिन आप लोग अपना पैशन परस्यू कर सकते हैं. So remember one thing, if you have passion, if you have purpose, and if that is your profession, nothing like it. If these three P's coincide, you are your own king, queen. So your generation has that liberty and choice of technology and liberation to get replaced. मैं अपनी जर्नी ऑफ वाटर स्टार्ट की जब मैं PhD कर रही थी वाटर बेस्ड वाटर ट्रीटमेंट में, जिसमें ग्रैनुलर एक्टिवेटेड कार्बन से हम लोग ट्रीट करते थे. एंड देयर आफ्टर इट वाज लाइक गोइंग अहेड विद दिस थिंग्स विद वाटर सेक्टर. एंड फ्रॉम रिसर्च साइंटिस्ट इन CSIR to a faculty in a university to consulting organization to World Bank, USAID, and then back to my own organization, consulting firm, which works across different spectrum of water pollution, water resource management, river-based management. And the crux of all this is emerging pollutants. This is one thing we all don't पे ही इमर्जिंग कंटामिनेंट्स है जो कैंसर कॉजिंग है. हम लोग बोलते हैं इतना सारा कैंसर हो रहा है बट वी डोंट गेट टू द रूट कॉज ऑफ इट बिकॉज हमारे एनवायरनमेंट में, हमारे वाटर में, हमारे फूड में, हमारे एयर में बहुत इमर्जिंग कंटामिनेंट्स है जो हम फील करते हैं, इंजेस्ट करते हैं. मेरा अभी का काम इस इमर्जिंग कंटामिनेंट्स, मेरे पॉलिसी लेवल काम भी उसी पे है. And then I was blessed that I was a part of the water policy of India, safe water use of India, and various other policy domains within India. That's briefly about me and the work which we are doing. I would like to do justice to other panelists and come back to other areas.
So let's now hear from Jinia as to what has been her experience, because your experience, Jinia, has been mostly in the university sector, although you've been actively engaging with the civil society as well. And one of the interesting things is you've been also running certificate courses and other programs for young people. And so that is something which would be really interesting in this context. So maybe for us to hear.
Thank you, thank you, for the introduction. And I think, if I think of the challenges in terms of integration in water education, so I think I can start with my own very personal story. Is that when I wanted to do a PhD on the canal systems and wetlands of Kolkata 10 years back at my university in Jadavpur. So during that time, this interdisciplinary was not much in vogue. But still, we heard of interdisciplinarity and this interdisciplinary domain. But then, when I wanted to actually, find out answers for some of the questions that I had in my mind. So, for example, the across disciplines kind of perspective was not very encouraging. So the idea was that you are coming from the history department, so you have to. When you are writing a thesis, you have to mainly visit the archives and apply the archival research methodology. But if you are going and talking to the people, so maybe you are transgressing the historian's pathways or domain. So that was a major challenge. So we love interdisciplinarity, but still I think there are a lot of challenges in terms of integration across disciplines. Then again, there are a lot of challenges in terms of integration across sectors. Because again, the challenge that we faced is that that you are academicians, so you are not activists. So what best you can do is that you can create perspectives for actions, but you should not execute them, because otherwise you are actually trading into risky domains and risky spaces. So you are blessed with this academic job. Why do you need to go and work with the grassroots organizations and people like that? So, but what I think is going very well now is that this kind of an understanding, this kind of awareness and appreciation of cross-disciplinary perspectives and trans-sectoral activities. These is bringing ground a lot, and this is also about this NPTEL course on water, society, and sustainability. So when I joined IIT Kharagpur 6.5 years back, so the idea was that when I talked to all the other faculty members who were, of course, doing the research on different components on water, because they are natural scientists and from the engineering domains. So all of them, water was a compound H2O. And for this course, the idea is that water is definitely beyond H2. So what is water? Because if we just understand water as H2O, only two molecules of hydrogen and one molecule of oxygen, then we are actually abstracting water from historical, cultural, economic, and several other aspects. So this course is about, how we can really think about water in different ways. So many meanings of water. And I think मैम ने ऑलरेडी बोला है कि कैसे हम लोग को ये अंडरस्टैंडिंग, ये सोच लाना है, क्योंकि सोच में अगर चेंज आ जाए तो मुझे लगता है कि चैलेंजेस धीरे धीरे एक एक करके हम लोग मतलब सॉल्व कर पाएंगे.
Okay, so I think Jinia correctly outlined some of the challenges which I've also been facing. So, for instance, when students ask me to give talk on social issues, sometimes I try to outline three roles for researchers and people who do for the education sector. So one is the role of an analyst, the other is the role of an advisor, and the third is the role of an activist. So the third role is something which university academics are quite shy of taking. Including me. The problem is that once you do research and once you're in the education sector, you basically lay out multiple perspectives which are out there, for people to choose. So once you take a position, it might actually, in the good sense, pollute or contaminate your own objectivity or whatever you call that. But I think that's also a good point to start the discussion, continue the discussion with Joy, because he has been an activist, he's been an active researcher, probably published in journals and academic for much more than people who sit in the universities. So, and in fact, we have also been part of a couple of training programs where we designed training programs together. So, I think it would be good to hear from you on this trajectory, and also probably respond to maybe Girija and Chini, and then probably we can open it up for discussion.
Thanks, Bijoy, and morning, good afternoon, friends. First of all, I'm thankful to Mansi and organizers and my friend Joy being part of this interesting session. Listen to Didi, heard about her, but it's the first time electing a Supaya. I think since the time is, the topic is very, very broad and wide, integration, education. So, just I want to keep 2 or 3 issues as my first comments. Especially said, पहला सवाल है कि आप इंटीग्रेशन की बात कर रहे हैं, किस चीज का इंटीग्रेशन? What is the integration we are talking about? And I think when you talk about water education, this is an important thing. Why do we get to water education? I think these are important issues which we need to address. We all know that in water sector in India is going through a crisis. There are very conflicting viewpoints, worldviews around water, how we conceptualize the water. And we always think in terms of binaries. Now, for example, we talk about small versus large, especially the water bureaucracy or water established concept of large dams as the only source of providing water security. Against that, we have the environmentalists and the NGO people saying that all large things are bad and small is good to some extent. We have dry land agriculture versus irrigated agriculture. We also have different scales of what is present in different scales. Now, when you talk about a watershed, you find certain amount of water, certain amount of flows there, and we talk about huge basins. Then you talk very different thing, and they're interconnected resources. So unless we understand the scale at which we talk about, we manage water, we conceptualize, there are problems. There are scales of the issues. Gina also talk about different sources, for example. We talk about groundwater, we talk about surface water, we talk about springs, and we need to make a session that is the entire time springs campaign. Nowadays we talk about green water, blue water, gray water, black water, thing, and we all operate in silos. And it has got also implications for institutions that manage, governs, and things. Now, for example, CWC, Central Water Commission, doesn't even talk to CGWB, for example. That's why the central government appointed committee under Miguel Shah to look at a different institution, design, architecture, and came with a report. The report is lying there. So what I'm saying is that the debate which we have in the water sector has a bearing on the terms of education, research, on the engagement in these issues. So I think so. For me, the important question is that when you talk about integration, we need to address very clearly what is the term integration. Is this the integration? And are our students, especially when talking about formal water education, I also know that there is one of the things outside the formal setup, and people like us have been involved in that, as civil society, or even in this work is also education. When we talk about water resource literacy, a whole lot of things the NGOs or the civil society are doing that. And we don't find that this work, we don't find it in the pedagogy of the formal situation. Why is that? At the moment, we put a box item or a small case study saying that we look at and read it things. Why is not that the people's experience, the people's movements experience become part of the pedagogy of the formal education? Is one of the gaps which I find. I'm not saying this is black and white. Like there are now efforts being made. For example, I've been also part of the water science and policy course in Tata University. The program is very interesting. Or I think some years back, Saki Waters had this crossing boundaries project in which they tried to bring it in disciplinary, for example. which the program was housed in universities with the technical, I mean, basically with the technology, where they bring in social science and technology. So I think probably there are some efforts I think there we need to further that, because they really and see that we are going to produce professionals or people with the necessary skills to engage. I mean, what I call is critical engagement in water sector, because there are a whole lot of discussion which is taking place. Now, for example, climate change itself, and what's the context we bring in. Climate change is there, and climate change is being used as an argument to go for more and more large dams, for example. I don't know whether you've Briscoe's report on saying that per capita water storage being equated with water security, for example. Developed countries like America has something like about 5,000 cubic meter water per person. China has about 2,500. India has only about 100 or 200. So that the pathway is to create more and more large dams, and we know what happens with that. I mean, there are a whole lot of movements against it. So properly, we should be able to equip our students to engage with these debates and take some informed stats. And only then probably we can reform, restructure the water sector in more equitable, sustainable, democratic lines. So this is my first thing about this issue. And how do we look at water education, especially the university setup and things. Second issue, which I find a major problem, is that what's the type of students we attract to these programs. I think that makes a difference. Many of these new programs in terms of water science and policy or water related courses are also getting embedded in private universities. I'm not against private university. Shiknara University is a private university. Asim Premji is a private university. Ashwag is a private university. But unless we also make certain things, enabling conditions there for people, students from either deprived geographies or deprived social sections to be part of that, I don't think that this program will cater to in terms of we can be able to transformative change. If education is a vehicle for transformative changes, then we need to also get students into that. Otherwise, paying 5 lakhs rupees, I could see a board here saying that withdraw the fee hike. I don't know what the type of fee hike the students are talking about here, but I think it's an important thing. So unless we can also generate resources to support students, either through scholarships and other type of thing, we may not get right number of students into the program itself. And this has been one of the major problems. The third point is that we need much more interaction between the formal academic institutions and an experience like hers or other civil society experience this integration, and which can influence both the formal education of the water sector as well as what is happening outside. Otherwise, these two spheres never meet. We do certain things that now we have something called a rural immersion or a 1 month internship. We also get students in many places. And we know what happens in 1 month, you just can't do anything. So unless you make this, and also how do you develop pedagogy? What happens often is that the gap which I find is that the first semester, the second semester, you have a whole lot of theoretical classes. And then you put the students into some rural setting for some time, and they don't match. So can we not reverse the whole process? That you make this whole rural realities and other type of things reflect on the different aspects of water. It's much more experiential based theoretical understanding. So I think we need to critique the way this education, the pedagogy which is there, and that I think probably we need to reverse this whole process to some extent.
So excellent, Joy. So I think probably the students of natural resource management program here also maybe share some of their experience probably in working with communities and how they've been doing this. But then before I open up for the general discussion, so I also wanted to just get Girja's and Genia's viewpoints on a couple of things, because you talked about water quality and wastewater and things. So one of the challenges that, for instance, I had was that when we were working on wastewater management and such things in urban areas, from my experience in Bangalore. So so all of us know as researchers and people in policy, and also as people on the ground, that water research and education is for a purpose, because it can't really sit as a theoretical thing. But again, when we talk about say engineering solutions for maybe a wastewater treatment plant, so there may be water which is released, so which have been maybe used by farmers and other people downstream. So there are always social dynamics which actually come into the picture. So since you have worked quite a bit on the technical side, how have you, dealt with this dilemma? I mean, I'm sure there are no easy solutions, but I mean, if there are some pointers which you offer, even as to trigger some dialogue or thought in our mind, that would be helpful.
Thanks, Chair, for asking that question. Wastewater is a very, very complex system because wastewater use should not be posing another health hazard for people downstream. So we have to be mindful for what purpose it is being used, fit for purpose. Yeah. And at the same time, seeing that this wastewater is not so costly and prohibitive in terms of its cost, that farmers and industries or urban cleaning purposes are not being met. It's best to if industries are buying it because for the sustainability of the entire system, if it is bought, there is like system improvement is there. But at the same time, for farmers, we know the reality that they can't pay for it. So we have to understand their paying for capability, their willingness, and figure out to what level of treatment it has to be done. If we treat it to secondary level, it is all right for the purpose of the farmers. So let it be. It is fit for farmers. But at the same time, we have to be mindful that it is not irrigated to for vegetables, leafy vegetables in particular, because the heavy metals get bioaccumulated and biomagnified, not the heavy metals, but the persistent organic pollutants, they get biomagnified. So these are a big, big loss. So we have to see that it is being reused in agriculture for non-edible crops. Second thing, urban greening is a very safe proposition because we have urban contours everywhere and it can be the transmission of water, wastewater is also the transmission is a cost. So we are mindful of the cost so that if it is very long transmission, we can't afford it because of the heavy cost, which is again prohibitive. So we have made hierarchies in the wastewater policy. We use policy, we have made hierarchy of rules and also hierarchy of purpose. But one most, as I mentioned, most remunerable is industries. Second is urban greening. Third is farmers. Same time, hierarchy wise, farmers first because we are talking about food security or maybe other communities. So we have to have those things. We have developed 10 business models in this to see which one works better for the industry, which one works for the farmers and for the urban greening. We are seeing all have pros and cons, but construction is a new industry which is having is taking, absorbing a lot of water, wastewater. So these are also worked out, but it is not a one size fit all. Different locations have different requirement and different dynamics. So these are some more calculations, more discussions to be done. But the dynamics are definitely quite interesting. If I'm allowed to say a few more words about the education, which he was talking about the formal education, which we have for education, the universities and the colleges. I don't say informal. We have the second part of it, which is the capacity building programs. Most of us who have gone into the water sector may not be trained academically in terms of those designs, engineering designs of social dimensions. The capacity building programs offered by GIA and other groups is excellent resource for building the capacity. It's a lifelong thing. We have to also see that we make the sector very interesting and very trendy. Four things which comes to my mind is one is salary. It has to be very attractive. Satisfaction. The third is security, that the future we have job security and social standing. If we have taken care of these four dimensions in our formal education systems, then students will be attracted. And there are deterrents like better options, computer science and others. There are the glamour factor, the government sector, and uncertainty related to water education. So if educationists can take care of these aspects, the students will be very happy that they get into this sector and really flourish. We are also proud and happy to be in the water sector. Actually.
Yeah, so I would actually like to take a couple of those points further in the concluding part. I mean, but before that, before again we open up, I mean, Jinya, I mean, zooming out into a more theoretical side. So, the kind of H2O angle that you talked about. So that's also a question of multiple worldviews. So I'm sure, since students at Tata Institute of Social Sciences and also people who are in the critical social sciences area are into critiquing, reflecting, and also thinking forward on many of these things. So how does this, contrasting worldviews actually coalesce or come together and then, in your own pedagogy, so in terms of imparting this, the curriculum in the university setting and also these programs that you use.
Yes, so I think what already Joyce and ma'am pointed out, that the need for critical pedagogies. So how and why we have to actually integrate all these multiple views, and because theoretically also this move is being made. We are actually advancing towards this, which is the good news. So because a lot of like theoretical discussions are going on in terms of concepts, like today, this idea or understanding about universal possibilities, and it's trending because the coinage like universal possibility, it actually unfurls and opens up multiple worldviews, right? And even this term universal possibility, when I say this for my engineering students, they're very happy. And then it's important that we don't restrict ourselves to just the theoretical discussion, but we need to give lot of real life examples to then make them understand what is this universal possibility. So very quickly, I'll give one example. So for example, the first exercise that I do in my class, and the class is an interesting composition, because for example, if I have this semester, I have 130 students. So 30 students computer science, 25 geology, geophysics, 5 students aerospace. So like that. So it's tough, but at the same time, it's also quite exciting and interesting. So the exercise, for example, that I gave them is that like, to you, what is water? And then they start writing down the definition, like what is what. And sometimes it's very very complex also, because sometimes I really also don't understand the words and terminologies and concepts that they use. But then what happens is that immediately, the student from physics, the kind of reflection that for example he is coming up with related to water, from there the student from geology or physics, he or she learns it. And then I start giving examples. For example, I give very very how do I say, like diluted examples. So for example, I say consider that during the day of Saraswati Puja, one priest is running from one hall to the other, and he has that pot with the water. So if you ask him what is it, he will never say that it is compound H2O. Is it compound H2O for him? So no. Then what is it? So they say, that this is holy water. And then what he will do, the priest, for example. So he will ask to cover our legs, because this is holy water. So when this holy water will be sprinkled, then we are not supposed to, this should not touch our feet. But then what happens? The farmer, he or she, throughout the day, stands in needy water and pursues agricultural practices. But that is holiness for him. So as that holiness is actually executed, so that is why the priest is able to execute his own way of doing. So in these different examples, and these people also come from different backgrounds and also from deprived geographies. So the idea is that we have to, always, sir, I think one thing is that if we wait for the opportunity for coming up with courses in different government institutions, maybe the wait can be too long. So that is something which we should be striving to, but we cannot wait because we have to do things, or we have to continue this journey. And what I'm trying to say is that, for example, we can actually offer different courses for students, even at breadth levels. So where they are coming from hardcore other disciplines, but in a very smart way, in a trendy way, we integrate some of the modules, some of the components in their courses in such a way that again brings a cognitive change. वो सोच में चेंज ऐसे तरीके से ला देंगे कि उसमें एक जुनून आ जाएगा कि मेरा जो अंडरस्टैंडिंग है अबाउट व्हाट इज वाटर, दैट इज नॉट द ओनली अंडरस्टैंडिंग. Because if that Wikipedia definition, or madam was talking, or madam was critically interrogating the water cycle, hydrological cycle, because but I think for 2 centuries we actually we kept respecting Robert Horton's hydrologic cycle, but now we are challenging it. Now we are critically interrogating it, right? So I think that if we, for example, the scientists and the engineers, they can really shrug off this arrogance that what I know about water is the only way of knowing water. Then I think change can actually be.
Just brief comments about that. What is basically what she was trying to bring out in terms of the world views and how do we see. So I think the water education also, I feel that how do we perceive river, water, etc., etc. And very often I find a very unilinear type of narration. River is beautiful, aesthetic, beneficial, all that type of thing which we see. I think as students, as part of the critical education, I think we need to interrogate this. Whose narration are we churning out? Now, for example, if I'm a Dalit who has been excluded or who has not been allowed to touch water for thousands of years, and his or her narration is going to be different than an upper caste person who has been all this. So the whole question of purity, impurity, touching, everything related to this is need to be part of our critical thinking and things. So it's no wonder that Baba Sahib Ambedkar's first political action was to open up the whole Mahar Satyagraha. What was it saying? He said that this Chowdar Talab should be open to everybody. And he also said, it's not that if the Dalits drink this water, they are going to get moksha or they are going to this. This is a basic issue of human right. So I think we need to be, okay, which position are we going to look at water? What the location we are talking about, what locations narration comes through. Whether it's class, caste, patriarchy, ethnicity, these are all, I think, important part of our education. Now, for example, this whole description of Nile, for example, by an Egyptian, which is the what you call the Delta region, which is the most prosperous and things. You find a narrative saying that Nile is so beautiful, so prosperous, and type of thing. You just shift to Ethiopia. They don't see Nile the same way because the floods and the type of destruction the river has caused. I'm not saying the river per se is causing the destruction, but the intervention. So a different narration there. So I think we need to get out of this very romanticized and very uncritical thinking about water and rivers and things and see this whole thing from the perspective of different societies, communities, and how this historically has been evolved. And I think that should be embedded in our education program. Just one minor point is about which she also hinted to about integration of. So there's a need to step out of water pursuits. Now, for example, if I say that agriculture uses about 85% of the fresh water today in India, then I think we need to engage with agriculture. What about agriculture are we doing? Look at them. If we say that water is an important social determinant of health, then probably we need to deal with health to some extent. So I think we need to have a little open and good thing. Also, water or understanding water alone may not solve all the issues. We need to step out a little more.
So that was an excellent round of discussion. In fact, I'm also tempted to share many of my experience. I mean, I'm an economist by training. And I also have that arrogance of engineers that Ginia was referring to. So I'm also tempted to share many of my experience. But then, unfortunately, I'm the coordinator of the session. So I have so I have to stop there, and then I'll just open up for discussion. Before I return to that, the 2 points on how can we maybe enthuse students to get attracted to the water education. But before that, yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah. So yeah, thanks for a wonderful session. And just taking off from what Genia said and Joy said that about the private universities, and I really believe I was thinking of that when you were talking that private universities are in a much better position to do new things, if for nothing else, but just to outdo each other in what they cannot attract students. But at least that because I've always worked in private universities. And I'm happy to, I just think that maybe we can carry a recommendation for whoever runs the university. In this case, I'm from Boston and about 6 months, and I'm an architect from Delaware University. So I would like to say that we have something anybody in the academia knows CBCS, right? Choice-based credit system.
Now that also happens to be in a silo. Now, what my idea is that we should give students a chance to choose actually from any discipline across the university. And let it not be, a course where you have to pass or you have to score so much. Let it be open for their own knowledge. For gain, maybe you give some kind of a credit to it. You give some kind of a proof for having attended and having learned something, but without creating too much pressure. You can improve. Because there are students who are doing something like you said, engineering, and maybe they are arrogant because they're not engineering, but they prefer to do something in social science. So they go through life and resenting that. But let's not have that resentment. If we can include them already in the process of education, then I think what we are discussing today, the integration, would really happen well. And just to say that today we don't have Vidya Vendras because he might change, a big discussion about how we offer scholarships to the needy. So the whole section on how, it's only that they don't actually look at merit. Somebody wants to know something, they can't. So I think I just got because
Yeah, Joy, let's take maybe comments or questions from students.
Saying that now Shudha University is now designing a new rural management. Here the condition we're putting is that if you have to get students of, we always say that we need to get students with the fire in the belly, only then can make a difference. But you have to get those students and we are offering 100% scholarships.
Right.
So I think otherwise, and also we're putting in things before they come into the campus. Now, many of the students may be little, may not be able to deal with English language. Language itself is an important barrier. We should know how to deal with that. So there'll be special programs for the people that come into the campus to do, or even computer basic literacy, etc., so that you come a little more equipped. Otherwise, I've been from Tata for social science in the main campus, 8 days. I've seen the type of divides, the class divides which exists in the campuses. People come from the urban backgrounds versus the rural backgrounds, and there is type of a mentality which develops in the student that we are inferior. So unless the education system takes this into, this one, that doesn't change. Right.
Okay, let's give the students a chance now. And I think so the question about the fire in the belly, bread and butter, I think you are the best people to question and then respond. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, just introduce yourself by name and maybe also the course that you are attending.
Yes, sir. This is Nagesh. I'm from Citizen Governance. So, as we announced by Karnataka government, 6 making new cities as like Hyderabad, high-tech city. So, what will be my question is that what will be the challenges for saving the water resources in urban areas? As said the Didi, challenges in village. But I was asking, I am asking, what will challenges in urban areas? This is also very important.
Yeah, so probably Girija would be the best person to maybe respond to that as a researcher and as a policy person.
Good question. And glad that you asked this question. We have something called water sensitive urban design, WSU. It's also called small city. In China, they call it small city. Different countries have different nomenclature. But the aspect is designing urban sensitivity, water sensitivity into the entire planning system, which NIUA and other agencies also. So here, water is not considered in silos. The entire urban system, it is basically river basin centric. So there's alliance between the river basin and the urban system, where we have river centric approach. Or by river, I mean a water body centric approach. The system which we had excellently, the example of the lake rejuvenation is part of that. And somebody in the morning said, गंगा वहां पे गंदी होती है तो कहाँ साफ होती है, यहाँ हम लोग को क्या होता है, यहाँ भी तो हमारी नदी तो वैसे हम जा रही है. So it is, though the name is given Clean Ganga or National Mission for Clean Ganga, लेकिन the entire effort is throughout the country. They're having various activities of that. So I can come and let you know the details of it if you want, but in nutshell, they don't have to.
just to add into ma'am's points, I think that this can also take place in a collective way. Because, I just remember of Karin Becker, who came up with this term called infrastructural archipelagos. So what is the big challenge is also not urban rural. So Joy sir was talking about, blurring binaries. Which is my favorite topic. So the thing is that I think another important challenge is peri-urbanization, because peri-urban in simple terms it's what was rural yesterday and it will become urban tomorrow. Today it is peri-urban. So the major problem is that these peri-urban pockets, so the designers are planning for urbanization, but unfortunately they still lack from piped networks. So they lack network infrastructure. But then what is happening is that how do these pockets, how are they still managing? So I think if we conduct very detailed ethnography, because we have done this for 3-4 cities across global south, for example, Cochabamba, Dar es Salaam, Kolkata. We found out that there are many examples, many examples through which the people who reside there, even the vulnerable communities, they come up with mechanisms or processes which are absolutely need based. And it is important, I think, to document these need-based practices because there is a lack in policy-driven initiatives. And the policymakers and the designers also can learn lot of examples or lot of lessons from these examples. So these can also go hand in hand where there can be blurring of binaries or boundaries between policy-driven initiatives and bottom-up needs-driven practices.
So let me, yeah. So let me since in the interest of time, so let me ask the students to ask a couple of questions on water education itself. I mean, maybe the question which I had reserved for the panelists, I mean, I'm just posing it to the students. So we have discussed about the challenges. We have discussed about what, the experienced and, well past the student days, people like me have actually thought about this issue. But then there are two burning questions. One, the fire in the belly that one of you pointed out. So is that passion? So is that still there? After you undergo new courses. So I mean that's a big challenge. I mean, second, related to that is also whether the issue of security and also jobs that Girija pointed out. That is really important because at the end of the day, you should also have your own livelihood secured before you venture out into securing others' livelihood, right? So whether these two questions are adequately answered in your curriculum. So are there apprehensions which you see in your career? So I think these are important issues. Go ahead.
So I have done mechanical engineering in my bachelor's and I changed my course. I came to social sciences. So I got this consciousness that we have to use renewable sources. And so I wanted to study more about it. And in that, I got to the conclusion that people try to conserve the resources when they think that their life is getting affected or their life will be going to be affected in future. Then only their consciousness arises that now there is a need that we should conserve them. And in my class, we have students from various departments, like different backgrounds, different courses. And we all have come to this course, a common course, natural resources and governance, to see that what can we do in future. But what I see that there is still an infrastructural development which should be there. As sir mentioned that there is language support which needs to be there. And there is not enough technology also. And if it is there, then there is lack in implementation. So how can we learn about this more during this during our course? That how can we improve that?
So I saw a couple of other hands too. Yeah, go ahead. So you're not a student, but
My question is, like, we have the riverfront development fashionable trend now, and we know that it's a big flop everywhere. So why don't we teach this, or the educators talk about this very openly to the students, and we prepare them how to not support it, and if not support, or how to oppose it, as in we need to be there, in all the chairs, departments, teams, policy making. Like, they don't have real experts, they have contractors. So uske bina, how can we
ensure that there is some future for water?
Yeah.
How do we empower these students?
Yeah, so go ahead. Any student? Yeah. So we
Yeah.
hear from the students. Yeah. Yeah, please go ahead.
Answering her question. Most of the interdisciplinary issues where technology students come to social sciences. For example, mechanical engineering to social sciences and then natural resources. I'm guiding to mechanical engineers where you have the opportunities of recovering the waste heat and save the energy. So we need to look into these combinations. You have a big number of opportunities. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. So, yeah, so we have one last, 1 minute quick comments response from the panelists, and then we will stop. Because I thought the students are not going to open up, but so just. Okay, so go ahead, students. So this is. Yeah, so this is your opportunity. The panelists are skipping it, so let your voices be heard. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. So what is the excitement? What is the challenge?
Well, it's more like a question to you. Is that it's personal experience. So in my second year intermediate, we had in general knowledge a good chunk of it in water wastage and things like that. And to give a TLDR, how it went was that basically the teacher would sit here and was like, all right, people, books, person student A, read from line 1 to line 10. And out of nowhere, next week we have an exam on that. And I go to the professor like, hey, I have a doubt about this. Can you explain? Like, well, hey, Manga, why don't you just go to it? I'm like, and my question to you is that implementation is great, but executing it is quite important, right? So in what way can we balance this? Like executing it in a quality way, but at the same time, it's not, if we can train other people as well, so they can train others. That's my question.
Yeah, I think we can have a discussion because these are questions which we ourselves have. So I think so just to conclude also in the interest of time. So probably there are several institutional, personal and other challenges that are there in water education at the moment. So I think this integration, the thinking around integration, interdisciplinarity, bringing together multiple worldviews and perspectives. So that is one good starting point. The positive thing is that at least there are some new universities which have come up, which have integrated programs and then people from diverse backgrounds. And also, as Joy was mentioning today morning, there are also no new openings in the social sector, employment opportunities which are coming up, maybe not as lucrative as the corporate sector, but still there are possibilities out there. So, but still the thinking needs to be, since it's a problem-driven area, since water education, like I said, is for a purpose. So we need to see whether this employment and also these opportunities actually serve the purpose for which water education is actually given, and whether the training and also the post training is actually serving that aim. So I think that's a good note to end the conversation. Thank you so much for joining. And apologies for the people who have joined online because I didn't take questions from them. But
we do have a question from online, but we will take the question or suggestion if it is there. Mr. Jha, could you please unmute yourself and place your argument or point, whatever you have to say, sir. Go ahead, please.
जी मैं ब्रजकिशोर झा
जी सर, मैं जानती हूँ, बोलिए।
नोएडा से बात कर रहा हूँ। बेसिकली मैं इंजीनियर हूँ, लेकिन मैं इंजीनियरिंग फ्रेटर्निटी से ही क्वेश्चन कर रहा हूँ और सोशल साइंटिस्ट की तरफ से चीज को समझने का प्रयास करें। मेरे किचन में गंदा पानी हो रहा है और वो पानी जमुना को गंदा कर रहा है, तो ये मेरी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है या सोसाइटी की रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है? तो ये प्रॉब्लम जो है, मेरे किचन का पानी अगर यमुना को गंदा कर रहा है तो ये मेरा प्रॉब्लम है कि वो मेरे किचन का पानी मेरे किचन में ही रिसाइकिल हो, और इसके लिए इंजीनियरिंग सॉल्यूशन अवेलेबल है। उसी तरह से बाथरूम के पानी को बाथरूम में रिसाइकलिंग करना पॉसिबल है। ये मेरा प्रॉब्लम है, इंजीनियरिंग सॉल्यूशन हम इसको ढूंढे। और ये मेरा जो मैं टॉयलेट कर रहा हूँ, ये टॉयलेट को हाइजीनिक करके उसका यूटिलाइजेशन हो सके, ये भी मेरा प्रॉब्लम है, ये सोसाइटी का प्रॉब्लम नहीं है। मैं चाहूंगा टाटा इंस्टीट्यूट ऑफ सोशल साइंस जैसे इंस्टीट्यूट इसके बारे में सोचें कि ये प्रॉब्लम क्यों अराइज हुआ। मेरे गांव में कभी कोई पानी गंदा किसी का होता ही नहीं था, कोई नाली बनता ही नहीं था, तो ये प्रॉब्लम क्यों हुआ, इस चीज को समझिए। और इस चीज के लिए मैं साथ देने के लिए तैयार हूँ, सब तरह से जुड़िए। टाटा सोशल साइंस जैसे इस जैसे इंस्टीट्यूट जो है इस चीज को सोचे कि ये सोशल प्रॉब्लम नहीं है, ये सोसाइटी का प्रॉब्लम नहीं है, और इसका इंडिविजुअल प्रॉब्लम को इंजीनियरिंग सॉल्यूशंस इंजीनियर्स इंडिविजुअल घर के लिए हो सकता है। ड्रेनलेस अर्बनाइजेशन पॉसिबल है, और इसके ऊपर मैं सेमिनार करने का प्रयास कर रहा हूँ। मैं चाहूंगा कि आप लोग इस चीज को समझे, पॉसिबल है। और ये पॉसिबिलिटीज को कॉलोनाइजेशन जो है, जो दुनिया का कॉलोनाइजेशन हुआ, ये अभी कॉलोनाइजेशन इस हद तक हावी हो गया है कि आपको पानी को गंदा करवा रहा है आपसे। प्लीज समझिए इस चीज को।
थैंक यू सो
डिस्कशन आप आपस में कीजिएगा। थैंक यू
सो मच सर, एंड वी लुक फॉरवर्ड टू आपका जो सेशन होने वाला है। मुझे थोड़ा सा खबर मिला है तो हम उसमें भी आके बात करेंगे। इट इज अ गुड सजेशन, और आज हमने सुबह इसी बारे में बहुत बातें की कि अगर आप अपने घर में गंदा काम और गंदा काम नहीं करेंगे तो ऑलरेडी प्रकृति को कम हमको झेलना पड़ेगा। थैंक यू सो मच विजॉय फॉर चेयरिंग द सेशन, जीनिया, जॉय एंड गिरिजा for taking the session so wonderfully, and thanks to all the students